Look around at the world for a moment. The suffering that seems to never end. The injustice that persists despite every effort to correct it. The gap between how things are and how they should be. Most people see this and feel one of two things. Either they conclude that the world is simply this way, that this is the nature of things and there is nothing to be done. Or they feel a vague guilt, as if they should be doing something but have no idea what or why it would even matter. Jewish tradition has a third response, and it is unlike anything most of the world has ever considered. Jewish tradition says, the world is broken on purpose, not as punishment, not as an accident, not as a sign that God has abandoned it, but because God left something deliberately unfinished, and left it unfinished specifically for human beings to complete. Today we are going to look at one of the most profound concepts in all of Jewish thought, a concept that has been studied for nearly 2,000 years, and that has something to say to every person watching this video, regardless of their faith. Welcome. What you are about to hear is a teaching that reframes one of the most fundamental questions any human being can ask. Why is the world the way it is? And what am I supposed to do about it? Jewish tradition's answer is more specific, more demanding, and more hopeful than most people expect. By the end of this video, you will have a new framework for thinking about your own place in a world that is clearly not yet what it is meant to become. Before we go further, if these ancient teachings have given you something worth thinking about, subscribe right now. One tap. Every week, this channel goes deeper into the wisdom and traditions of the Jewish people. And this community keeps growing because people like you believe these things matter. Subscribe. And let's begin. The concept at the heart of today's video is known by two Hebrew words, tikkun olam. Tikkun meaning repair, restoration, making straight. Olam meaning world, universe, eternity. Together, repair of the world. These two words appear in the Mishnah, the foundational collection of Jewish oral law, compiled around 200 CE, where they describe specific rabbinic rulings designed to protect the vulnerable, close loopholes in the legal system, and ensure that Torah was applied in ways that protected ordinary people. The Talmud uses the phrase in discussing situations like debt forgiveness, where the technical application of biblical law might actually harm the poor, and calls for adjustments made for the sake of tikkun ha'olam, for the sake of improving society. From the very beginning, these two words described a specifically Jewish responsibility: to look at the world as it actually is, broken, imperfect, unjust in places, and to take action to make it more as it should be. Not to wait for the world to fix itself, not to wait for God to intervene, to act. The phrase tikkun olam has origins in classical rabbinic literature and in Lurianic Kabbalah, a major strand of Jewish mysticism originating with the work of the 16th century Kabbalist Isaac Luria. And over 20 centuries, its meaning has deepened in ways that are remarkable to trace. In the 16th century, a Jewish mystic living in the city of Safed in what is now northern Israel offered an explanation for why the world is broken that is unlike any other in human history. His name was Isaac Luria, and his teaching begins before creation itself. Luria taught that before the world existed, the divine light of God filled all of reality. There was no space for anything else. So God contracted, pulled back, to make room for the world to exist. Into that space, God sent vessels, containers meant to hold the divine light and channel it into creation. But the vessels could not hold what was poured into them. They shattered, and when they shattered, sparks of divine light scattered across the entire universe, buried in the darkest corners of creation, hidden inside ordinary objects, ordinary moments, ordinary lives. Luria taught his followers that fragments and sparks of divine light were buried in even the darkest corners of the universe, and that when people perform acts of goodness and kindness, they lift up the sparks, restore them to their source, and literally help to repair the broken world. This is not just mythology, it is a map that says every act of kindness, every moment of justice, every time a human being chooses what is right over what is easy, a spark is lifted, a fragment of broken light is restored, and the world, piece by piece, is repaired. Now here is where this concept becomes genuinely demanding. Tikkun olam does not say, do what you can and hope for the best. It says something much more specific. It says, you are a partner, not a bystander, not a spectator, not someone waiting for God to fix things while you observe from the sidelines. A partner. The modern conception of tikkun olam reflects the idea that we fix the world by working toward the manifestation of divinity in every corner of the world, and that this requires human responsibility and action. The Jewish mystical tradition went even further. The mystics believed that our human actions in this world have the power to effect change and transformation within God's very self. That tikkun olam is literally an act of healing the divine. Think about what that means. Not only is the world broken, but according to Lurianic Kabbalah, the rupture in the world reflects a rupture in the divine itself, and human beings, through acts of justice, kindness, and repair, are the ones who help restore it. The weight of this teaching is enormous, but the rabbis were careful to ensure it did not become paralyzing. What we're describing here is not an abstract philosophy. It is a framework for waking up every single morning and understanding that your actions matter. Not just for yourself, not just for the people around you, but for something much larger. If that idea is landing for you, hit the like button right now. 1 second. It helps more people find these teachings. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. Because what comes next contains one of the most freeing ideas I have ever encountered, from the Mishnah itself, about what is actually required of you. Here is the teaching that changed everything for me personally when I first encountered it. The Mishnah, in Tractate Avot, chapter 2, verse 16, records the words of Rabbi Tarfon. It is not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it. Read that again. It is not your responsibility to finish the work. You are not required to fix everything. You are not expected to solve every problem. You are not responsible for completing what generations before you failed to complete, and generations after you will still be working on. But neither are you free to walk away. You are required to participate, to do your part, to lift whatever sparks are within your reach, to repair whatever corner of the world your life touches. This is, I believe, one of the most psychologically wise and emotionally honest frameworks for human responsibility ever articulated. It addresses the two extremes that destroy people's capacity to act. The first extreme, the paralysis of perfection. The feeling that if you cannot fix everything, there is no point in doing anything. The second extreme, the escape of indifference. The feeling that because the problem is too large, you are justified in walking away. Rabbi Tarfon's teaching refuses both. You cannot fix everything. That is true. But you cannot do nothing. That is also true. What you can do is your part. And your part, in the Jewish understanding, matters cosmically. Every spark lifted is a spark restored. Every act of justice, however small, is a piece of a broken world made more whole. So what does tikkun olam actually look like in a human life? Jewish tradition gives us a remarkably practical answer. It looks like tzedakah, charitable giving. But tzedakah is not charity in the sense most people understand it. The word comes from the Hebrew root for justice, tzedek. Giving to those in need is not an act of generosity in Jewish thought. It is an act of justice, a recognition that wealth is not entirely the product of individual merit, that some of what you have came from the world around you, from luck, from circumstances beyond your control, and that returning a portion of it to those who need it is simply the right thing. Not optional, not praiseworthy in the sense of going beyond what is required. Required. Tikkun olam also looks like gemilut hasadim, acts of loving kindness, visiting the sick, comforting those who mourn, welcoming strangers, burying the dead. Actions that do not require wealth or power. Actions available to every human being in every circumstance. In the modern era, tikkun olam has come to refer to the pursuit of social justice, the idea that Jews bear responsibility not only for their own moral, spiritual, and material welfare, but also for the welfare of society at large. But what strikes me most is not the scope of the concept. It is its consistency. For 2,000 years, across wildly different political, cultural, and historical circumstances, the Jewish people have maintained this basic orientation toward the world. It is broken. We are responsible for helping repair it. We cannot do everything, but we cannot do nothing. Two Hebrew words, first used in the Mishnah 2,000 years ago, deepened by mystics in 16th century Safed into a cosmic framework about divine sparks scattered across creation, and carried, generation after generation, by a people who looked at the world's brokenness and refused to accept it as final. What I find most remarkable about tikkun olam is what it assumes about human beings. It assumes we are capable of meaningful action, that what we do in our small corner of the world, in our families, our communities, our ordinary daily choices, actually matters. Not just for us, not just for the people immediately around us, but for the world itself. And for something in the mystical understanding, even beyond the world. The vessels were shattered, the sparks are waiting, and every person alive right now has the capacity to lift some of them. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Rabbi Tarfon said, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work, but neither are you free to desist from it." What is your part? Not in a grand, abstract sense. In your actual life, in your family, your neighborhood, your ordinary daily existence, what is one thing you know you could do that would repair something that is broken? Write it in the comments below. I read every single comment. And I genuinely believe that what people share here is some of the most honest thinking happening anywhere on this platform. If this video gave you something, hit the like button right now. It helps more people find these teachings. And subscribe, because next week we are exploring another ancient Jewish concept that reframes something most people take completely for granted. One that changes how you think about time itself. One tap to subscribe. Thank you for being here. Shalom.